we would now like to welcome Professor Philip Romero, who is going to talk about the costs of illegal immigration.
So why is this such a big deal? As you have heard from just the panelists who've spoken thus far, there are a variety of reasons to be concerned about illegal immigration. Jim Walsh just gave a very eloquent and impassioned one with respect to legal issues. Diana Hall touched on some of the population and sociological issues. I'm an economist, so I'm going to talk about the economic impact. And let me say a couple of things. The economic and then the impact on taxpayers. First of all, immigration has historically been a great economic boon to the U.S. Legal immigration has been a great economic boon. What's happened is that over in the late 20th and early 21st century, the composition of immigrants has changed. Once upon a time, we had roughly equal numbers of very highly skilled legal immigrants. These are the proverbial Indian software engineers and Chinese scientists, who, by the way, are now running about 7 out of 10 Silicon Valley companies. About half of the immigrants are that type, and about half were illegal. Illegal immigrants come in a variety of types, but increasingly they are poor peasants from Central and Southern California, or South America, rather. Average schooling, 3 to 6 years. 100 years ago, when the U.S. was still industrializing, if you have a strong back and a good work ethic, you could make it in the U.S. economy, even make it in the middle class, or at least count on your kids to make it in the middle class. There are fewer and fewer jobs like that today. Here, especially in Washington, you can't not hear a Democratic politician complain about income inequality. Income inequality is essentially the difference between what prosperous people make and what poor people, or what lower middle class and poor people make their incomes. And income inequality is largely occurring because the income of low-skilled Americans is suppressed. And it's suppressed because such a large supply of very low-skilled Mexicans and Guatemalans and El Salvadorans, etc. In the early 1990s, when I worked for the governor of California, we were facing our worst recession since the Great Depression and a massive budget deficit. And he asked me to look in the issue, how much of this was due to illegal immigration, and I did. And I found quite substantially. About half of our budget deficit at the time was resulting from illegal immigration. Now, why do I say that? Essentially because the benefit structure of government benefits in the U.S. is largely and quite appropriately skewed towards the poor. And when you come to the U.S. not knowing the language and having 3 to 6 years of education, you are likely to be poor. With luck, your kids won't be, but you are very likely to be poor. In addition, I discovered at the time that illegal immigrants were about twice as likely to be in the California prison system and thereby be wards of the state. Collectively, on average, state taxpayers were spending about $2,600 per year per illegal immigrant. When Wayne Lutton and Diana Hall put this team together to do this study, I was asked to update my study. My 1994 study, and I was astonished to find that things have gotten much, much worse. First of all, the 1.7 million immigrants that were estimated to be in California at the time has probably tripled. It's probably about 5 million. Probably about 1 out of 7 Californians are illegal immigrants today. Secondly, their skill level has gotten even lower, down to on the order of 3 years of education I mentioned before. When you add up so as a result, state taxpayers are through 3 main programs: through health care for the indigent, Medicaid, through education, and through the criminal justice system, are paying very substantially more than for the services provided to those immigrants than the taxes the immigrants pay. Specifically, I found that today, for every dollar that illegal immigrants pay in taxes, and they do pay some, even those in the underground economy inevitably have to pay things like sales taxes, and even if they rent their housing, they pay property taxes indirectly through their landlords. But for every dollar they pay in taxes, they're absorbing $8 to $12 in services paid for by general taxpayers. When you multiply that per immigrant number by the number of illegal immigrants, which, as I said, has tripled at least in the last dozen years, you get numbers on the order of $10 to $40 billion costs to state taxpayers. To put that in perspective, national perspective, if you did that same estimate at the national level, you'd probably be talking between $100 and $150 billion. The current federal deficit is on the same order of magnitude. So, order of magnitude, the federal deficit would be wiped out if illegal immigrants could pay their way, or if illegal immigrants were no longer here. Now, what the most salutary, well, in a story that is largely about degradation and magnification of the problem, as I said, for example, the number of illegal immigrants in California alone has tripled. About the only silver lining to this cloud is the fact that as California has gotten more expensive, illegal immigrants have proliferated throughout other states. Enough so that while this was very much a regional issue in the 1990s, it is a national issue now. I will, in the interest of time and to save some time for the other panelists, I'll stop here. I'll simply say that I'm someone who believes strongly in liberal immigration laws, but I'm also one who believes in legal compliance. The last thing I'll say is that when you have as large a fraction of the population who is flouting the law as we have here, and when, to be very candid, Congress is complicit, as James Walsh just alluded to, you then have the risk of a breakdown in legal compliance entirely. And if you wonder what the world looks like in that environment, look to many South American countries or many African countries where the underground economy isn't 5 or 10% of the economy, but it's 80 or 90% of the economy. And you have essentially a failed state. Now, I'm not suggesting, I don't mean to exaggerate the magnitude, we're a long way from that, but the apologists for illegal immigration and the willingness to coddle legal noncompliance is a dangerous step in that direction.